Hi all. Hi, Dr. Farooqi. Hello. I am Muzammil Yaqub and I'm a PhD scholar at IIT Delhi School of Public Policy. I have my undergrad from Aligarh Muslim University and a master's in political science from Jawaharlal Nehru University. I'll be moderating the session today. And I was also the participant in the inaugural batch of InDialogue studies back in 2019-20. So participants today we have with us Dr. Irfanullah Farooqi, sir, and it's always a really great honor and pleasure to hear from sir. Dr. Farooqi has taught sociology at the South Asian University in New Delhi, Aligarh Muslim University, and Jamia Millia Islamia University. As a result of his MPhil on Faiz Ahmad Faiz and PhD on Muhammad Iqbal, which both were acquired from Center for Study of Social Systems, JNU, New Delhi, he has developed a keen interest in the meeting point of sociology, literature, and history. Currently, Dr. Farooqi finds himself inclined towards Islam and Muslims in South Asia, Urdu Studies, South Asian social thought, sociology of literature, and sociology of education. As of now, he is interested in university nation interface, academic freedom, secular religious exchange, media culture dynamics, and questions related to identity. He will soon join the Indian Institute of Management Kozhikode as a faculty. Today, sir will be speaking on the topic dialogue in Gandhi's idea on Varna, religion, and conversion, a critical reading. Sir, you have up to 2 hours for the session, and we have 1 hour for the question answer session, basically. So, and I remind all the participants to keep their cameras on, and we will have the questions. I mean, sir can tell us if he would like to take the questions during the session, or maybe we can just have the full-fledged session towards the end of the session. Floor is all yours, and we again thank you for your time, and we hope the participants learn from you as much as I have over the years listening to you in Aligarh, JNU, and other places. Thank you, and you can go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Muzammil, for very generous words. And I don't think I'll be able to take 2 hours. That's too much. I think that's an expectation far fetched. But but yes, of course, I'll be happy to be a part of this collaborative learning. I don't think I'll speak for a very long time. I think I'll maybe take about 45 minutes, not more than that. So I would really want, because it's a close group, and I think it's also something that excites many of us. Hopefully, these are these are themes, these are interfaces that one way or another speak to us, speak to our times. Questions pertaining to caste, questions pertaining to religion, and of course, questions pertaining to conversion. So I'm certainly more interested in learning from others as well. So I will not really speak for that long. In all likelihood, I should be done in about 45 to 50 minutes. So just to sort of, yeah. So now let me just start and get on with some of the core pointers in relation to this particular theme. So I am, I'm of course grateful to In Dialogue Foundation, to Behzad, and to Muzammil for this opportunity. I genuinely think that there are better speakers around, but but yes, I've been given this opportunity, so I hope I'm able to at least perform as per the expectation, if not exceed the expectation. So let us. So this theme, this particular theme, dialogue in Gandhi's ideas on Vern. So there are three things that we are looking at: Vern, religion, and conversion. I have not written caste because Gandhi particularly uses the term Vern, and there's a reason why Gandhi holds on to it. So I have simply borrowed from Gandhi in this regard. I could have written Gandhi's ideas on caste, but caste as a word sort of acquires a certain currency in the 1950s. And when Gandhi is particularly writing, specifically 1920s and more specifically 1930s onwards, the word that is used is Vern. Now, Ambedkar, of course, as a matter of principle, uses the word caste and not Vern. But because we are borrowing from Gandhi right now, so I'm using the word Vern. So Gandhi on Verne, Religion and Conversion, a critical reading. So just to kind of engage with some of the core ideas uh, pertaining to Gandhi in relation to Verne, religion, and conversion. So that's what it is. Now, this might seem like a very sort of a calendared ritual because tomorrow happens to be 2nd October, Gandhi's birth anniversary, and today we are discussing Gandhi on Verne, religion, and conversion. I totally get it if anyone here or some of you here have some unease regarding this. It can be slightly unsettling. I totally get it. In India, we have had this weird way of remembering people. We only remember people either on their anniversaries or around their anniversaries. So I totally get it if you find it a bit, uh, yeah, a bit uncalled for. But then I also believe that there is a certain merit, in fact, a distinct merit in reclaiming the conventional. So I think what I'm trying to do is I'm kind of course, doing the conventional, but in doing it in a different way, I'm sort of trying to reclaim the conventional via something that is arrestingly different. So my task here is, or my quest here is to do the usual, but in doing the usual, try to do the unusual, right? I hope I succeed in it, but just in case I don't, that's totally on me. So I'm trying to sort of bring in something unusual. One of the things that I want to do here through this conversation, through this interaction, is that I am particularly trying to put on record, I am trying to borrow from Gandhi's original writings. I'm not at all interested in, at the moment, not to say that I am dismissive of those, but I'm not interested in what others have to say about Gandhi on Verne, on religion, on conversion. That is something that does not really bother me as far as this particular event is concerned. So I am, as a matter of principle, in this particular conversation, for this particular interaction, I am interested in what Gandhi has to say about Verne, religion, and conversion. And I must also put on record that I do not make this claim that I have read everything that Gandhi has written on Verne, religion, and conversion. We all know that Gandhi was one heck of a maverick when it came to writing. Gandhi wrote a lot. And it is almost impossible for anyone to claim that they have sort of read everything by Gandhi on anything, right? Because Gandhi has definitely written a lot. He was absolutely prolific. Uh, so this is all about original readings, original writings, and I'm going to stick to that. So let me just so following this, let us take up each of these, right? So let's take up Verne, and then we take up religion, and then we take up conversion. And I will not really go into too much of details because that is perhaps not required. I just want to kind of uh, take up some of the important pointers and then sort of build a set of arguments in the context of dialogue, in the context of a sense of associated mode of living, etc. So to begin with, let us look at the idea of Verne. Now, Gandhi, as I pointed out a while ago, that Gandhi is interested in the question of caste. In fact, he is somebody who has expressed a certain rebellion early on in his life. So I'm sure those of us who have read his autobiography, or those of us who have read his, something on his biography, would know this, that when he left for England in 1888, he was already somebody who had renounced his caste in many ways, because his caste members, Gandhi came from a Vaishya Verne, his caste members had almost sort of, it was almost like a certain kind of a condition that was put forth, that if Gandhi were to travel, if Gandhi were to cross the sea, he would not really be a part of his caste community, his Verne. But Gandhi, of course, decided to cross the sea. And as a result, in doing so, he ended up sort of renouncing his caste. So, again, something that is worth thinking about. So, at a very early age, Gandhi is somebody who does not really Of course, there are different instances, but this particular instance, so his drive vis-a-vis going abroad, crossing the waters, etc., and to the extent that he goes against his own caste members, he goes against his own caste clan. So that is just in the background. Now, Gandhi, of course, in England, later on in South Africa, the question of caste does not arise that much. The question of religion does, question of vegetarianism, non-vegetarianism, these questions do emerge. But the question of caste sort of remains somewhere uh, at the horizon, perhaps at the periphery. And once Gandhi is back in India in 1915, 1914, 15, well, that is when, the question of caste, once Gandhi gets into rural India and gets on with series of satyagrahas, so 1920s onwards, the question of caste once again enters into his thinking, politics, etc. But the most important moment, and again, I don't think I'm really offering anything novel here, is the Gandhi Ambedkar episode. So this is 1932, and Gandhi and Ambedkar come face to face. And this happens to be one of the most pivotal moments in modern India when two of the icons, two extraordinary thinkers of the 20th century, they come face to face and they debate with each other in relation to the question of separate electorate. And Gandhi, of course, is not in favor of separate electorate for SCs, particularly SCs, but this was SC/ST demand. Ambedkar is, of course, in favor of separate electorate. So this is 1932. And we know very well that Gandhi ended up sitting on fast, observing fast unto death. And Ambedkar, being a sensible man, he ended up accepting Gandhi's demands, and there was a pact called the Pune Pact that was signed. So this is the moment when Gandhi's ideas on Vern actually come out very clearly. So there is an exchange between Ambedkar and Gandhi, but just to kind of put on record some of the core ideas, I will not get into Ambedkar's ideas because of course, they are radical, they are extraordinary, they are revolutionary, but maybe that is for some other discussion, some other deliberation. So I'm not getting into the annihilation of caste genesis. I'm more interested in, at the moment, for this particular conversation, I'm more interested in how does Gandhi bring in the question of Vern? How does he look at it? Now, Gandhi, when he's talking about Vern, right, and I'm now using Vern consciously, I'm not using the word caste. When Gandhi uses the word Vern and when he engages with this idea, he is primarily engaging with it from the vantage point of what we call primacy of duties. Now, Gandhi is somebody who is always more inclined towards the idea of duties and not so much towards the ideas around rights. Now, again, if you compare Gandhi and Ambedkar, it gets very, very clear that Ambedkar is somebody who's really into a certain kind of, a modern nation state idea, which is around constitutionalism, which is around equality, liberty, rights, etc., and a certain kind of a social contract. But Gandhi's idea of contract is very different. Gandhi is always thinking about service, the idea of duty, the idea of service, the idea of a certain kind of reciprocity, which is not necessarily based on a very instrumental understanding, but it's based on more of a service-based understanding of reciprocity. So Gandhi, whenever he's speaking about Vern, whenever he's reflecting on the idea of Vern, he's always operating from a vantage point where duties are always more important than rights. And that's the typical Gandhian framework. I think Gandhi holds on to this even in his writings on religion, the idea of duty, the idea of service. And when he's talking about duties in the context of Vern, he's talking about ancestral duty. So basically, the idea is that, if you're born in a certain family, if you're born in a certain group, if you're born in a certain Vern, then there is a certain ancestral duty that you have to follow, right? Now, the following of the ancestral duty is something that, according to Gandhi, is a dignified thing. And Gandhi, and I think one has to be absolutely clear about this, that Gandhi is not mincing words. He's not being diplomatic. He genuinely believes in the fact that any act of labor is a dignified act, or labor in invariably is something that carries dignity. So the idea of dignity of labor. So whether you are cleaning toilets or you are delivering a sermon on the Rigved, according to Gandhi, both are acts of labor, and he does not make any um, he does not work with any hierarchy when he's talking about labor in this case. So he's basically looking at Vern as some sort of division of labor, and again, a system that is based on the idea of dignity of labor and based on the idea of primacy of duty, but the idea of ancestral duty. So if I'm born a Shudra, there is this ancestral duty that I have to follow. So as a Shudra, whether I'm a washerman or I'm a peasant in few cases, or I'm a blacksmith or a weaver or a tailor or a barber, whoever, there is an ancestral duty. So Gandhi is talking about that particular contract, which is based on the idea of duty, the primacy of duty. But Gandhi also speaks about, he also writes about the concept of additional duty. So you have ancestral duty and then you have additional duty. Now, ancestral duty would want me to continue as a washerman, or ancestral duty would want me to continue as a blacksmith or as a potter, or even as a sanitation worker, but that's ancestral duty. But the additional duty is something that I can always take up. So Gandhi's overall imagination of Vern is basically premised on a certain idea of internal flexibility. So Gandhi does not believe, does not subscribe to the idea that Vern is inflexible, that there is rigidity, that there is no movement in terms of people's work, people's labor. So he believes that there is a certain internal flexibility. And in fact, Gandhi himself practiced this in his ashrams. So I'm sure some of us already know this, that in Gandhi's ashram, at Sabarmati and elsewhere, Gandhi was everybody actually adhered to a certain roster. So today you are in the kitchen, you are basically cooking food, or you are helping others in cooking food. So today you are in the kitchen, tomorrow you are tending to plants, day after you are tending to the livestock, so you are taking care of the goats, the cows, etc. And then a day later, you are in the prayer hall, you are basically leading the prayer meeting, or you are part of the prayer meetings, etc. And then a day after, you are cleaning toilets. And this is something that Gandhi was very, very much clear about, that, there is a roster, and we will all keep doing different acts in the ashram on a daily basis. And this is again the idea of what we call flexibility, and the idea of everyone doing different things at different points in time. So Gandhi followed this, and as I said earlier as well, I really don't think there is anything diplomatic about this position. Gandhi genuinely believed in the idea that any act of labor is a quintessentially dignified act of labor, and we should really, really attend to that, right? We should attend to that dignity of labor. So this ashram roster is something that we can think about. The other thing that is also important is, and there are scholars who've written on this, but whenever Gandhi talks about the coming together of the Brahman and the Shudra, or this idea that the mental and the intellectual and the physical coming together, or the extraordinary, the spiritual, and the mundane, the material coming together, Gandhi is also trying to kind of reimagine a certain conception of education as well. So, for example, for a very long time, the Varnashram system was based on this idea that there is something called the physical, the menial, the mundane, which is usually associated with the Shudras and the untouchables subsequently. So there is this mundane, the ordinary, the menial, the routine, and then there is the extraordinary, the spiritual, the special stuff, right? The unusual stuff, which is associated with the Brahmins, so the intellectual, the spiritual, etc. Now, when Gandhi is kind of trying to reimagine education, he brings the intellectual and the physical together. So if you look at Gandhi's writings on Jamia, the university, and if you look at the early years of Jamia University, you would get to know that in Jamia, it was very important for students not only to do intellectual stuff, mental stuff, but also to do things with their hands. So there was a very elaborate sort of curriculum which was around people doing gardening, or people into pottery, or just using their hands. So when a student is also using their hands, then Gandhi is basically, again, trying to get the mental and the physical together. So a certain kind of a conversation between different faculties. So in some senses, Gandhi believes, I am drawing this parallel. I don't know to what extent this is a right parallel or uh, an yeah, maybe yeah, an appropriate parallel. But I believe Gandhi believed that Vern essentially leads to a certain kind of a society where a human being, a person, is able to attend to different faculties. So maybe the idea of the whole man, as we find in Marx. So when Marx talks about capitalism and a certain kind of emancipation that would lead to the whole man. So capitalism is all about fragmented man. And communism, the classless society, will lead to the whole man. So, in some senses, Gandhi is also imagining Verne, not to romanticize, but Verne as something that always offers various possibilities to each one of us in terms of exploring different faculties. So, that is the Gandhian position that, human beings are endowed with different faculties. And if we go by what the Gandhian idea is, now, Gandhi is also, just to make it clear, Gandhi is somebody who always does this with most of the key terms of Hinduism. So, for example, there is an existing understanding of Vern, but Gandhi would say, I do not consider Vern to be what other Hindus think. I consider Vern to be this, this, this. And this is something that he has done in relation to most of the key terms of Hinduism. So, this is about Vern, this is about, in general, the idea of religion, this is about the idea of prayer, this is about the idea of ritual, in Hinduism as well. So Gandhi is absolutely clear that the ways in which Hinduism is understood by Hindus in general is something that he does not subscribe to. So he was doing this again and again. So he would use a conventional word, but then he would always qualify it, and he would say that I don't mean what people in general mean. So for me, Vern is this, this, this. It is not that, that, that. For me, Hinduism is this, 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 and not that, and so on. So Gandhi was always into this. I think he took, in fact, he in most of his writing, he's always doing that. That there is a particular concept, there's a particular framework, and Gandhi would kind of reclaim that concept by um, sort of loading, by kind of endowing that concept with something else, with a completely different um, meaning, as it were. So Gandhi basically believed, if you look at the Verne argument, he believed that one should not aspire for a profession, uh, but one should simply be contented with, one should simply be satisfied with what one receives as a part, as a matter of ancestral profession. So one should not really aspire for a profession other than one's ancestral profession. And one should simply be okay with the tradition into which one is born. So this is his understanding. And he believes in the fact that if there is equality, if every act of labor is considered as equally dignified, then people will, of course, continue with their ancestral professions, and they will not really sort of aspire for a profession other than that. Now, we know very well. So, he's basically looking at Verne as a certain kind of a dialogic practice, right? That Verne is offering a certain possibility of dialogue between different castes, between different professions, and between different acts of service. Now, we know very well that this is not really, just to kind of also look at the other side of this narrative. We know very well that this is not as simple as Gandhi would have it. Now, again, Gandhi believes in something does not mean the society also believe in it exactly the same way. The society might not really be thinking about Verne exactly the same way. For example, all these people who were there in Gandhi's ashram, and who were adhering to a certain roster, meaning they were cleaning toilets one of the days, they were in the kitchen one of the days, they were attending to the livestock one of the days of the week. Once they went out of the ashram and they went back to wherever they came from, of course, they were not doing any of this. So once they are back with their families, they once again have manual scavengers, they have toilet cleaners, they have shudras, attending to different service requirements in these families. So Gandhi is, of course, he is making a case, but we know very well that the society honestly did not adhere to much of what Gandhi was pointing out. in fact, Gandhi, even when he's borrowing from different scriptures, it is interesting to see that Gandhi, just like many other reformists, it's a selective borrowing. It's a selective borrowing. So, for example, Gandhi repeatedly goes back to the Mahabharata. Of course, he goes back to the Bhagavad Gita way more often, but Mahabharata is, of course, a very important text for Gandhi. And when you look at how Gandhi is borrowing from Mahabharata, you immediately get to know that Gandhi's borrowing is markedly selective. So he is only borrowing those instances that, of course, strengthen his case. So, for example, this very famous quote of Yudhishthir, which is about the idea of the Brahman, and how the idea of the Brahman is not to do with birth, but the idea of the Brahman is to do with quality, is to do with a set of attributes, is to do with a set of virtues. Now, Gandhi uses this extensively, that a Brahmin is not somebody who is by birth, but a Brahmin is someone who is by virtue. Now, this is, of course, there in Mahabharata. One cannot contest it. But Mahabharata is also full of various other examples that tell us that how Varna was a very rigid and exploitative system that did not let any dialogue between different communities. So, for example, the legend of Karn, that when Karn goes to the Swamvar for Draupadi, he is not allowed to kind of pick up the bow because we do not know his ancestry, and people call him a Shudra, and because he is a Shudra, he cannot really take part. So there is a very clear case of caste in Mahabharata as well. But of course, Gandhi would really be very selective in his borrowing. And Ambedkar has serious issues with Gandhi's entire take on Varna, because while Gandhi is talking about Varna as division of labor, Ambedkar is saying in Annihilation of Caste again, Ambedkar is saying that Varna is not division of labor. Varna is basically division of laborers. It is not division of labor, right? So Ambedkar does not consider Gandhi's ideas on Varna of any merit. He dismisses them outrightly. He does not consider that there is any intellectual, moral merit in what Gandhi has to offer. So Gandhi, as I said, he is thinking about Varna from a specific vantage point, the idea of duty, the idea of internal flexibility, and the coming together of the mental and the intellectual and the physical. So that's broadly in relation to Varna. So Gandhi is pitching the idea of dialogue, but to what extent there is dialogue in Varna, we know very well. Perhaps Gandhi is trying to sort of push for a certain kind of a romantic reading of Varna, but the fact of the matter is that maybe Gandhi believed in it, but most of the Hindus, most of the practitioners of Varna did not believe in it. So this is one. And Gandhi also always considered, untouchability, etc., as an aberration. So this is Gandhi's position, that anyone who believes in untouchability and claims to be a Hindu is not really true to his claim. But that's Gandhi's belief. There are many, many Hindus, there are many other people of different religions who practice untouchability and also identify themselves as part of the religious community they come from. Now, so this is in relation to Varna. Now let's quickly look at religion. Now, Gandhi has a remarkable take on religion, and Gandhi's idea of religion is not as much to do with organized, institutionalized, priestcraft sort of bit of religion. But I think in Gandhi, whenever we read on religion, we are going from religion to religiosity. So it is the idea of religiosity that acquires extraordinary potential in extraordinary currency in Gandhi's writings on religion. So when we are talking about religion, how does Gandhi look at religion? So basically for Gandhi, and he is talking about his own religion, if we are looking at Hinduism, Gandhi believes in religion as something that is constitutive of society. So basically, for Gandhi, religion is what, in the typical Hindu theological sense, is to be called dharma. Now, dharma, of course, in day-to-day conversation, in day-to-day parlance, dharma is always translated as religion. But dharma, those of us who know, is not religion. Dharma is essentially a certain moral conduct. It's a 24/7 life world. It's something within which we are hopelessly situated. We are never outside dharma. We are always inside dharma. So dharma is that largest possible, or yes, the largest possible overarching system uh, that that sort of defines us and determines our day-to-day conduct to a certain extent. So whenever Gandhi is talking about religion, of course he identifies himself as a Hindu, but he does not talk about Hinduism the way generally people talk about it. So his Hinduism is not rituals, his Hinduism is not customs, his Hinduism is not traditions. His Hinduism is primarily a certain kind of a dynamic, a certain kind of uh, an introspective association with the deeper spiritual basis, right? The deeper self. That is what his Hinduism is. So he does not believe in Hinduism as as simply a sort of uh, a religion in the sense of rituals, customs, traditions, mores, etc. For him, Hinduism is basically a code of conduct, right? So this is exactly how uh, in the Bhagavad Gita, the idea of dharma is invoked, and Gandhi kind of holds on to that. So, for example, in the Bhagavad Gita, on numerous, or not numerous, but on several occasions, Krishna, who is considered as the voice of conscience or the divine sort of presence in the Mahabharata, uh, Krishna is always asking Arjun, "What is your dharma?" That's a perennial question. And this is an interesting question because Arjun never says, "My dharma is Hinduism." But Arjun is always perplexed about this question because dharma is a very tricky matter. Dharma is about saving, and dharma is also about killing. Dharma is about love, and dharma is also about enmity. Dharma is about care, and dharma is about a certain indifference. So dharma is about violence, dharma is about non-violence. And Arjun is always perplexed because he's simply not able to understand how could it be dharmic, how could it be righteous to kill your own brothers. But this is exactly what the idea of dharma is, that it is constitutive, it is the basis, it is the foundation of our day-to-day life. So Gandhi, when he's talking about religion, wherever, religion for him is not something that is simply a matter of some practice. So religion is not something that would start at 5 o'clock in the evening and then end at 5:15, and then again start at 7 o'clock and then end at 7:15. That is something that Gandhi does not endorse. What Gandhi is subscribing to is more of a 24/7 understanding of religion. Religion as something that is all the time, one way or another, determining your conduct. And it is in this context that he invokes the idea of dharma. So, one of his famous statements, wherein Gandhi, I think in one of his letters in the 1930s, he writes that to me, every act of mine is determined by what I call my religion, even the minutest act of mine. So, now this is something that makes it very clear that we are not talking about religion in an institutionalized, organized church community sense. We are talking about religion that is more day to day. We are talking about religion that is more intimate, and we are talking about religion that is more about self realization and self introspection. So, from here, we get on to something which is very important about Gandhi's ideas of religion, that religion is always a means of a deep introspective conversation with oneself. So, there is a certain kind of a dialogue that is going on within the self. And that is something that is a result of religion, dharma. Now, again, in the case of Arjuna as well, you have on the one hand people saying that Krishna as such does not exist, but Krishna is inside Arjuna. Krishna is the conscience. And there is a constant conversation that is going on between one aspect of self and another aspect of self, the good and the evil, the confused and the clear, something like that. So Gandhi is essentially thinking about religion in terms of a perpetual, endless, incessant conversation, a dialogue that goes on and on. And Gandhi is absolutely certain that religion is not, true religion is not something that is going to mark the end of one's spiritual quest or one's religious pursuits. Because religion, according to Gandhi, religion must evolve and religion must be dynamic. So, religion is a 24/7 thing, religion is constitutive of society. For Gandhi, religion was always more important than the political. He never ever operated with some sort of a horizontal plane where religious is one and political is another. Gandhi actually believed that religious and the political must come together. Contrary to what Nehru espoused, Nehru always believed in a certain principled separation between the religious and the political. But on the contrary, Gandhi actually always talked about the importance of religion in politics, because once again, religion is going to provide that moral foundation. Religion is going to provide that basis, the much needed ethical basis to our politics, because only then the politician or the political leader is going to do the right thing. Be aware of his dharma, be aware of her dharma in day to day politics, in day to day political dealings. So Gandhi is talking about religion as something that is overarching, something that is encompassing. That's another point. That for Gandhi, religion is encompassing. Religion is something that is absolutely taking care of everything. Everything is under religion, within religion, which is again the idea of dharma. And we know very well that in the Hindu Purusharth as well, dharma is encompassing. So whether we are talking about earth or we are talking about kam or we are talking about moksha, all of this actually comes under dharma. So dharma is overarching, dharma is all encompassing. So this is generally about, so basically religion for Gandhi is not something that would ever lead to a certain feeling of hierarchy. Religion is something that would lead to a sense of harmony, a sense of connectedness, and a sense of oneness. So Gandhi operates with this understanding. And some of you might already know this, that Gandhi, because he was so much into other religions as well, while he was in South Africa, and he was in South Africa for quite some time, for approximately 24 years. While he was in South Africa, because he used to borrow from the Bible a lot, many Catholic missionary folks, they thought that Gandhi was almost a Christian. And of course, fools they were dumb folks. They could never figure out what kind of a, what kind of an unusual character Gandhi was and what kind of an unusual Hinduism he carried with him. So many of these Christian missionaries, they thought that if only we were to sit with Gandhi and maybe, have a chat, have a conversation, maybe in 10, 20 minutes, he will be a Christian. Of course, they wish, they were just far from the truth. And they tried repeatedly. They tried on many occasions to convert Gandhi while he was in South Africa. But of course, they failed, and they failed miserably, because Gandhi is somebody who is borrowing from the Bible, but he's actually somebody who is always a Sanatani Hindu. Now, how does he define Sanatani Hindu is a completely different discussion. But he is somebody who's borrowing from the Quran. He's somebody who is borrowing from the Granth. He's somebody who is borrowing from various Buddhist sources. He's borrowing definitely from the Bible. Sermon on the Mount is one of his favorite texts. But as I said, he is somebody who is not willing to leave his religion. And his understanding of religion is absolutely remarkable. And from here we go on to conversion. But basically, Gandhi, when he speaks about religion, and he's somebody who's absolutely anti-conversion. Of course, there are moments when he speaks in favor of conversion, but I'll come to that. But as a matter of principle, he does not believe in conversion. He remains absolutely against the idea of conversion. And in one of his writings, in fact, on several occasions, Gandhi writes that as a Hindu, he does not want to convert another Muslim or Christian to Hinduism. And he writes that as a Hindu, he believes his job is to make a Muslim a better Muslim. As a Hindu, his job is to make or help a Christian become a better Christian. Now, this is a very different turf. Gandhi is completely, he's altering the terms of reference here, because conversion is a very different ballgame. And Gandhi does not believe in it, because although conversion, if you look at, although this is something that is later, and then Gandhi is dead when the constitution enters the scene and talks about religious liberty. But if you look at the Indian state's position on conversion, it's very clear that basically it's a lateral movement. So you go from religion A to B, the state does not have any problem with it, because for the state, all religions are equal and the state respects all religions equally. So it's not a problem at all, whether you go from religion A to B or you go from A to B and then to C and then come back to A the same day. You could just hop around for as long as you want. Of course, this will be a mockery of the right that the constitution, the state gives you, but you can do that. The state does not have any problem. But Gandhi is basically looking at something completely different. And that is a problem that we are confronting right now, right? Because there is a lot of discussion around conversion. In fact, I was quite surprised, and maybe not so surprised, that not so long ago, I think maybe 2 3 days ago, I don't exactly remember when was I reading this newspaper. And in the newspaper, there was this news relating to India's vice president. And India's vice president, in one of the programs that he graced um, by his participation, uh, he talked about conversion, and he spoke against conversion, and he spoke about the problem that conversion is posing to a country like India. Now, this is again a very problematic position because, as we know, conversion is a right. You have a right to exit from religion, and you have a right to not follow any religion. You have a right to enter into another religion, embrace another religion. These are all rights. This is all broadly within religious liberty. But again, Gandhi was thinking about it. I think there is an element of far-sightedness that Gandhi exhibits. So Gandhi is not interested in the act of conversion as such, and Gandhi believes that there is always a possibility that, as a matter of, you have pursued it very deeply, and you have arrived at the realization that your spiritual requirements or your spiritual needs are taken care of by religion B and not religion A. So you exit religion A, you leave religion A, you join religion B. So individual conversion, Gandhi believes, is something that is not really an issue. If it is a result of a meditative, prolonged um, reading and deliberation, then Gandhi, of course, is not at all in opposition to that. Gandhi is very much in favor of that. But when it comes to mass conversions, Gandhi has not written extensively on mass conversions, but Nehru definitely has. When it comes to mass conversions, Gandhi is not really in favor of that. So Gandhi is not in favor of an act of conversion that is not informed and deep, because Gandhi genuinely believes that all religions are equal. Now, if all religions are equal, then conversion as such does not make sense. One could make a counter argument as well. One could also say, well, as such, conversion should not be a problem, because if all religions are equal, then whether I go from religion A to B or B to C, how does it matter? So if Gandhi were to become a Christian, how would it make any difference? Because end of the day, Christianity is also equal, or it's on an equal pedestal with Hinduism. But Gandhi is not looking at it from that vantage point. Gandhi is looking at it in terms of inter-community relations and, in general, the Indian public sphere. So I think what he has in his mind, and I'll come to some of the quotes a bit later, what he has in his mind is that every act of conversion is always seen as an act of, as something that is leading to loss for one community and gain for another community. And Gandhi is particularly disturbed by the proselytizing that is carried out by the missionaries in India. And on various occasions, he talks about it and he questions it publicly. He's been invited by various Catholic groups. And as he graces the stage, he also speaks against conversion. So he says that if conversion is a result of a certain offer, or if conversion is a result of a certain kind of a worldly benefit, then of course it's a tragedy. It's not conversion. But if conversion is a result of a certain kind of deep inner spiritual quest, then Gandhi is absolutely fine with it. So his point is, every time we convert, the religion we leave is considered as a religion that has incurred loss. And the religion we go to, the religion we embrace, the religion we enter, that is a religion that is considered as one that has gained. Now, this loss and gain, this very transactional understanding of conversion is something that Gandhi is not in favor of. So he is basically of the opinion that all religions are equal. Now, given that all religions are equal, there is absolutely no scope whatsoever for conversion. So he's writing about conversion all along. And in fact, he points out that conversion is also a result of a certain kind of, in fact, his issues with conversions have to do with his broader issues with the rot in Hinduism. Because he says that in one of his reflections, if I remember correctly, this is sometime in the mid 1930s, and he's writing in Harijan, and the essay is called "Deploring Conversion," and he writes that conversions are but one small result of the disease. What is the disease? The disease is something to do with the broader religion, and he's saying that if we can take care of the cause, then automatically conversions won't happen. So he does not look at conversion as something that happens on its own. He sees a certain reason. So conversion is happening because uh, there is less fraternity, there is less love and affection and compassion within the community. So one set of people, for a variety of reasons, might feel left out, might feel excluded, might feel inferior, and it is something that can actually trigger a certain interest in conversion. So he's particularly talking about the missionaries, right? And he believes that actually conversion is not something. So he's quite pissed off. He's quite unhappy about uh, different communities almost competing with each other, right? And when religions become a matter of numbers, and this is something that Gandhi does not really agree with, because religion for him is not really about counting how many people you have, how many people how I have. This month we've got 4 new converts. This month you've got only two, etc. So this was perhaps happening in the 1920s and 30s. But Gandhi, of course, is wrong on a few occasions, and I'll come to that in some time. But basically, he says that if conversion is about counting, and if conversion is about how many today, how many tomorrow, then he says this is basically a blasphemous thing. You're not really serving your religion. You're basically going against your own religion. It's a blasphemous act. It is something, it's an act that is absolutely against God. Now, the problem with Gandhi in relation to this conversion, reflections on conversion, in the 1920s, when he starts writing about it, of course, he's been writing about conversion for quite some time, but in India, in the 1920s, you have new developments. So, what Gandhi is doing is he's thinking about three things in one go. And that's where I think there is a serious problem on his part. So, he's thinking about proselytization that is carried out by the Christian missionaries. Then he's thinking about the Shuddhi movement into which the Arya Samaj is massively invested. And then he's also thinking about the Tabligh, which has just started. Now, as far as my understanding goes, Tabligh is not about converting other people. If you look at if Gandhi actually, because this is 1927 and this is just the beginning of the Tablighi Jamaat movement. Now, if you go back to the history of this movement, Tabligh has got nothing to do with non Muslims. Tabligh is primarily, if you look at, again, the core foundational principles of the movement, Tabligh is not about bringing non-Muslims into Islam. Although the word Tabligh, of course, means that ibla, or a certain kind of a deeper sort of spiritually inclined call towards the good. So there is ibla, tabligh, etc. But when it comes to the usage in the context of India, tabligh was not about Muslim and non-Muslim. Tabligh was basically about making Muslims better Muslims. This is exactly what the Tablighi Jamaat movement was committed to earlier. And even today, the Tablighi Jamaat movement has not really deviated from that. So the Tablighis do not really speak about converting people of other religion to Islam. In fact, they are more committed to making sure that Muslims become better Muslims, or Muslims become closer, they get closer to the foundational principles of Islam. If you think about Shuddhi, Shuddhi is also not about conversion. Shuddhi is about helping people come back to the original religion, which is Hinduism. So this is, of course, to be traced back to Dayanand Saraswati, 1860s, 70s. And when you have a lot of, not a lot, but you have quite a few cases of conversion, Hindus becoming Christians for the most part. So Dayanand Saraswati brings in an entire format for conversion, because remember, in Hinduism there was no procedure for conversion. Unlike Christianity, unlike Islam, there was no procedure for conversion in Hinduism. In Hinduism, it was absolutely clear. In the 19th century, early 19th century, if you were to go to a priest and tell this person that you want to be a Hindu, well, this person would say, well, you want to be a Hindu, you have become a Hindu. But that would never happen in a religion like Christianity, Islam, even Judaism. That would not happen. So, anyways, Shuddhi movement is different. Tabligh is different. Proselytization is different. But what Gandhi does is that he brings all of them together and he treats all of them as one and the same. But if you, as I just tried to point out, of course, in a very abbreviated way, they realize that actually Shuddhi, Tabligh, uh, and proselytization are very different. But Gandhi is also thinking, he is not at all dismissive of conversion. We know very well that Gandhi did acknowledge the importance of real, honest conversions. He did believe in this fact that there is a possibility that a person genuinely arrives at this understanding that there is this religion that is more in sync with a certain kind of a spiritual requirement, a spiritual nourishment that I need. So Gandhi does acknowledge that, but he is not at all in favor of undermining another faith. And he believes that conversion actually leads to undermining the faith that one has left, and in some senses, uh, assigning or attributing more virtue to the faith one is becoming a part of. So he's in that sense, conversion is also something that goes against the possibilities of dialogue. In fact, for Gandhi, conversion is absolutely anti-dialogue, right? Because what conversion is doing is that conversion is not letting the dialogue with one's own self acquire its true potential. And that's why Gandhi is not really in favor of conversion, because somewhere, as I think in one of his letters, he also points out, conversion suggests that one's own religion is true, and one religion is true and another one is false, or has some erroneous basis, etc., etc. And lastly, because what conversion does, according to Gandhi, is that, as I was pointing out, that it does not really let a certain dialogic spirit attain its true potential. So, for example, let's say in the case of Hinduism, if one were to entertain this premise that conversions were happening because of the practice of caste or because of practice of untouchability in particular. Now, Gandhi is saying that conversion is not really the right tactic, something that Ambedkar actually proposed, that conversion must become our ultimate tool to kind of tackle this problem of untouchability, casteism, etc. Now, Gandhi believes that if my religion, if it looks like my religion is imperfect, if my religion seems to me imperfect, then it is my duty to do something about making it as perfect as I can. But conversion does not really let any of that happen. So, in conversion, what happens is I see something, an issue in my religion, from the vantage point of caste, from the vantage point of gender, whatever, and I do not do anything about it. I simply leave my religion, I become part of another religion. So that engagement, that struggle, and this is once again leading to what we call satyagrah. Because in Gandhi, you see a certain kind of coming together of different ideas. Satyagrah is also about not leaving the front, but basically holding the line, as we say, struggling and believing in possibilities, believing in the indomitable spirit of the human being, and believing in the fundamental virtue that goodness or a certain moral force always carries. So conversion, it does not really lead to much. And he keeps going back to this very interesting metaphor, the metaphor of a rose. He goes back to this flowers, and he says that, basically, if I am somebody who is good, if my religion is really good, then I don't necessarily have to preach my religion. And he beautifully uses this sort of imagery, and he says that a rose does not need to preach, right? It simply spreads its fragrance, and the fragrance, it's quite beautiful actually, in a sense. He says that the fragrance of the rose is its own sermon. So the rose does not really have to preach. Its fragrance itself is its preaching. So the fragrance is its own sermon. And he says that religions don't necessarily have to actively get into this. And just one pointer, Gandhi's issue with conversion is also, there is also something personal about it, because his son Harilal, he actually embraced Islam, and Gandhi was not very happy about it. He not happy because he converted to Islam, but he was unhappy because he genuinely believed that Harilal was not engaging with Islam the way he should. That Harilal is simply seeking recourse to a certain shortcut. And he, in one of his letters, actually in the 1930s again, there's a statement that he issues. It's a statement issued to the press in 1936, perhaps. Statement that is for the Muslims of India, and he's just sort of clarifying his position, and he says that Harilal has left Hinduism and he has entered into Islam, and he says with somebody like Harilal, this should not really be considered as a great thing for Islam, because if Harilal remains the same useless person, he uses the word wreck. He says if he remains the same wreck, then of course Harilal is going to be a source of weakness to Islam as well. So he is not against conversion as such, but he's against a certain kind of a shortcut. And any act of conversion without a clean heart is something that Gandhi would never ever really side with, or would never really be a part of. So basically, anyone who believes that all religions are equal will definitely not entertain, will not really look into the idea of conversion at all, because that is, it's basically, it's a horizontal, it's a field, that's an open field, and all religions are one way or another speaking about different manifestations of divine, or they are helping us chart out our own trajectories vis-a-vis truth, vis-a-vis enlightenment, vis-a-vis self-realization. So this is broadly, of course, there is more to it, but this is broadly in relation to what we call Gandhi, in relation to Gandhi's basic, very foundational ideas pertaining to Varna, pertaining to religion, and pertaining to conversion. In most of the cases, what we see is that Gandhi believes that these sites, these concepts, these ideas, these frameworks offer incredible scope for dialogue. But because they have been hijacked by certain demeaning spiritual, demeaning religious agendas, or very base political forces, or very immoral sort of acts in the name of politics, in the name of religion, etc., they lose out on their dialogic possibility. And that is why people end up sort of settling down with something that is of lesser virtue, and something that is not as important as virtuous in Gandhi's ideas, in Gandhi's overall imagination. So we know that these are sites of dialogue, but we also know that these are not sites of dialogue. In relation to Verne, I pointed this out, that there is, Gandhi is although pitching that case, but it is not really as dialogic. We talk about Hinduism as an accommodative religion, and of course, Hinduism happens to be the most accommodative religion. I don't think there is any disputing that fact. But then within Hinduism, and this is something that Ambedkar takes up, that while it is accommodative of other religions, for example, Buddhism can always flourish as a separate religious tradition, Jainism can flourish, Sikhism can flourish. In fact, there is an atheistic tradition within Hinduism that can flourish, the Lokayat tradition. But within Hinduism, there is not much of accommodation that you see. So within Hinduism, there is a certain kind of exclusion and discrimination. There is discrimination, there is inequality, and there is exploitation. So Gandhi is pitching a certain case of religion, but we know very well that at a certain level, it is convincing. But the moment you start scratching the surface, you realize that Gandhi, and he does this all the time, he will say that you are calling it bottle, I'm not calling it bottle, I'm calling it something else. So he invariably uses his own ideas, and he attributes his own thinking, his own frameworks to existing ideas. And that's how he reclaims some of these ideas. Whether that's a right thing or not a right thing is, of course, left to us. We are all sensible, mature, and educated and informed to take a decision as to whether Gandhi is right or wrong on these counts. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir, for such an incredibly insightful session. I mean, it's always an honor to hear from you. I'm sure the participants, they were very patient and they will have more questions so that we can take this discussion forward. I request everyone, if you have whoever has questions, please raise your hand so that we can go about it in some order. You can just raise your hands and then yeah. Jay Adlaha, please go ahead first.
Hello. Good evening, sir. Good evening. One second. I wrote down my questions, so just give me 1 second to find them. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have like multiple questions, so I hope you don't mind because I am also currently studying in Jamia and masters in peace and conflict analysis and peace building right now. So we have had a lot of debate. I am also graduate of like BA history from Ambedkar University. So I have had a lot of discussions on Gandhi and Ambedkar in my academic life. So like I would like first of all say that this was one of the best like sessions on Gandhi I had. The kind of perspective that you put Gandhi's ideology in is has been one of the best in my like academic life that I've ever heard. So a few things is that one, when you point out that Gandhi was genuinely believed in the benefits of merging the political and religion in society, right? This he wanted to create this, but when we see it currently in process in society, it has turned into something I would say that Gandhi would not approve. So how did he basically envision it, and is was there like a better solution to this, or is the current sort of structure we have working?
Oh, so great. So you said a few questions. So are we going one by one?
Yeah, if it's better for like however you prefer,
No,
sir.
no, I think that's better because memory is not one of my strong areas. So I tend to forget. No, but great. So this is an important question, and I wish I had actually offered a clarification during the talk. So see, Gandhi believed in this coming together of the religious and the political because he was operating from a very different epistemic position. So, for example, just to kind of extend the argument, if you look at the Western European position vis a vis separation, right, in secularism, for example, what is the logic? Why is it that in Western secularism there is so much insistence? In fact, it's one of the cardinal principles, right? We cannot think of secularism without thinking about the principle of separation.
Yeah.
Now, the reason for that, and the separation vis-a-vis political and religious, or we could say public-private, either ways. The simple reason is, and please correct me, but my hunch is that there is a certain understanding that the political is about possibilities. The political is something that is going to take us from good to better to best, right? So the age of the nation state, the secular age, the liberal democratic age. So political is good, religious is bad, and in Europe, religion is bad news, right? So, and the logic is every time you bring the good and the bad together, of course, it's the goods loss, right? Good kind of loses massively. So they would say, let's not bring religion and political, the religious and the political together. Now, when Gandhi is talking about the religious as the basis, his argument is that politics is any act, forget politics, any act always has to have a moral foundation. So basically, this is something that he takes up in Hind Swaraj as well, in his famous chapter, What is Civilization? And then later on, What is True Civilization? So he talks about civilization as something that makes us aware of our call to duty. So something that makes me aware of what is the right thing to do. So politics is also not outside that. But just to also point out, towards the later part of his life, Gandhi actually made a case for separation. But for a reverse logic, it's an absolutely anti Europe logic. So European logic is religion is bad, politics is good. We should not let them go together. Gandhian logic towards the end of his, because he has seen what partition has unfolded. He has seen what communal frenzy has unfolded. And Gandhi, again, we know this, Gandhi is somebody who's not really celebrating independence. He's in Noakhali, he's in Calcutta,
Yeah.
he's in Patna, and then he's in Delhi, and he intends to go to Lahore, but of course that does not happen. So Gandhi is absolutely clear that religion and politics better be separated because politics is going to kill religion. And this was also a position in the Constituent Assembly debates. There was a small section of people who said, they said religion and politics should not be linked with each other. Not because it was going to demean state, but it is not because it is going to weaken the state, but it is going to demean religion. Just to lastly, what is happening right now? Of course, Gandhi will never, because the coming together of religion and politics today is not what Gandhi was advocating. He was thinking about, now whether that could have worked out or not, we never know. We would never know, actually, because that did not happen. But maybe what he had in mind was that we need to have a certain kind of a moral foundation. And in that sense, again, maybe we can think about corruption differently, because today we only think of corruption in terms of scams, in terms of bribery. But a leader who indulges in hate speech, is that person not a corrupt leader, right? So we only understand corruption in a very neoliberal sort of way. That corruption is just about money. So one leader corrupt. But there are many leaders who indulge in hate speech, who indulge in divisive politics, who indulge in all kinds of communal propaganda. That's also corruption. And people, the Gandhian understanding would be that this is moral corruption. This person is no less evil as compared to someone who's been found guilty of some kind of financial irregularity. So this is what I would say. Of course, this is very tentative, but at the moment, this is something that I would say to your question. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer, sir. And my next question is basically, it sort of is that there is a sort of, maybe it's my sort of view that something I have seen in academia is there's a sacrosanctity of Gandhian ideas, where essentially criticism of Gandhian ideas is, I don't want to say restricted, but there is sort of that aspect. But there's also this, you have to be, exclusive, I would say, right? It's you either fork off of Ambedkar, or you, or some other, basically you either fork off of Ambedkar. That's the baseline there. So there's this sacrosanctity of Gandhian ideals, but throughout the session, there was, the impression I got was that in these ideas there's a lot of room for criticism, and a welcome criticism as well, that it wouldn't be treated with hostility. So what's your opinion on that?
So yes, you're quite right, and I would be the last person. You see, as a co-learner, I would never ever endorse uncritical acceptance. I think the only thinker where I really kind of fall a prey to this is Tagore, not with Gandhi. So Tagore, I'm simply not able to criticize. It's almost impossible for me. He's such an extraordinary essayist and poet and writer. So that's where I lose it completely. But I also, so you're absolutely right that there's a certain reverence that we associate with Gandhi, and there is. Ashish Nandi has written brilliantly about it. Had Gandhi not been assassinated, perhaps our association with Gandhi would have been very different. Had he died a natural death, I think the nation also feels guilty one way or another, given the way in which the man met his end. But while on the one hand, one should be critical of this. So uncritical reverence is something that as students, as academics, as learners, readers, one must have a principled position against. But I would also say that uncritical criticality is also a problem. So there is also, I've seen also a certain trend, right? Maybe we are two generations now. I've also seen a trend, for example, during my student years at JNU, where people would just do Gandhi bashing for no reason. Well, that's also something that I think is absolutely uncalled for. So again, I believe in the fact that as readers, we can make sense of a text. So it is up to me to read Gandhi on word, right? Now, I don't necessarily have to endorse Arundhati Roy's, extraordinarily long essay just because she's Arundhati Roy. Now, she has, of course, a right to express her opinion. But end of the day, we are well in a position to arrive at certain understanding. So we can read Hind Swaraj and we can see for ourselves whether Gandhi's take on modernity makes sense or it does not make sense. End of the day, I should not get into bashing because it's just cool to be a Gandhi basher, right? And also, because you only pointed out, I don't think as students we can really work with binaries. because usually there seems to be a very problematic pathological binary doing the rounds, that if you are speaking on Gandhi, then you must be against Ambedkar.
Yeah.
If you are speaking on Ambedkar, you better be a Gandhi basher. I don't think it works that
Exactly.
way.
Yeah.
And Valerian, Rodrigues, and Gopal Guru, they have written extraordinary work, pieces on this, that there is an element of dialogue. Of course, Ambedkar was always right. I don't think there are two opinions about it. When it comes to the Pune Pact as well, Ambedkar was right. Gandhi was wrong all along. But end of the day, Gandhi also offers a lot of avenues to think. For example, in terms of decolonization, the idea of Swaraj, the idea of modern civilization. A lot of postmodernists actually are going back to Gandhi's critique of modern civilization. So he offers a lot of scope. So this reverence is something that is unacceptable. I don't think just because Gandhi happens to be father of the nation, this, that, we simply get carried away and we remain absolutely hopelessly smitten by a certain aura. That is not done. But at the same time, I know a lot of people who have not read most of the works of Gandhi, but they rip him apart. I think that's a bit unfair. So
They have this perspective from excerpts and articles, basically
not yeah. So
fourth party perspectives.
reading someone else. So for example, if someone tells me that why don't you read Arundhati Roy's Doctor and the Saint? Well, I am absolutely against that. I don't think I will ever give Arundhati the right to inform me on Gandhi and Ambedkar. I will read it, but I will read it after reading Ambedkar in original. I will read a Annihilation of Caste on my own. And I am in a position. And see, very often in universities, unfortunately, we create a very weird ecosystem. We always keep referring to secondary texts. So nobody will ask you to read Gandhi in original. They will give you Perry Anderson. They will give you Judith Brown. They will give you Faisal Devji. Oh, these are great interventions. But I think we must first understand, read autobiography, Hind Swaraj, Satyagraha in South Africa. And there are many other pieces. And Gandhi is so lucid. It's just, this is not Foucault, Heidegger stuff.
His language is very simple as well. Yeah.
All these thinkers, Ambedkar is also very simple. Tagore is very simple. Nehru is very simple. But it's people who are writing on them. My goodness, they make it very abstract. And then you're reading somebody like, again, nothing against the scholarship. But for example, when Shamabrata writes on Ambedkar, he is, of course, an extraordinary intellectual. So when he is writing on Ambedkar, you are simply banging your head against the wall because that's like serious stuff. But when you read Ambedkar on who are the Shudras, how did they become Shudra, that's just a plain text. It's a brilliant text. I'm not demeaning Ambedkar's scholarship. But the greatness of Ambedkar is that he could talk about extraordinary ideas in a very accessible language. That's what Gandhi does. That's what Nehru does.
Yeah, so I have a comment basically. I won't say that I have read a lot of first-hand Gandhi, but in my history degree, I did read like the first-hand Gandhi and writings on Hind Swaraj and all that. I in fact wrote we had to give a book critique of Hind Swaraj, and in my critique, I read the book and I felt a lot of his ideas I disagreed with, and it wasn't based on any wider sort of academic sort of scholarship. It was based on my personal opinions and my personal beliefs, not necessarily in a spiritual way, but in a more practical sense. So that's basically what my comment is. And my final, essentially short question to you is that could you basically simplify for me the Gandhi's Varna and Ambedkar's caste? Where do these two concepts merge, and where do these two concepts differ?
Varna and caste.
Yeah. So
So
basically, Gandhi's
yeah. So I think this is more of a sociological moment because I don't think Gandhi was really. Maybe I'm kind of crossing the limit here, but I don't think Gandhi was really aware of the anthropological nuances of writings on caste. Or so, because in any case, the kind of work that was being done on caste in India at that point of time, even by sociologists, was not really first rate. This was very ideological, colonial sort of framework. But basically, we can say Vern is the book view. So Vern is simply about four Varnas, right? And this idea that the Hindu society, the Hindu social order is a fourfold social order. Whereas caste, and this is not my view, this is M.N. Srinivas, who says caste is an ethnographic reality.
Yes. Yeah.
So the field view is caste. So caste is about thousands of subcastes, groups, communities that are spread across different regions. But Vern is essentially about a certain scriptural, textual book view, which is about that the entire Hindu society is about these four Varnas. And interestingly, I ask many students often, and that tells us how horrendously ignorant many of us remain. Whenever I write on the board just the four Varnas, and then I ask them, it's always a trick question. I ask them, where are the untouchables? They always say D. And then I tell them, no, Shudras are not untouchable. Shudras are constitutionally speaking the other backward classes. We still have a lot of Hindus who think because A, B, C, D, D is the lowest, these are the untouchables. But the untouchables are outside the Varna.
Outside the Varna system. Yeah.
The Panchamas or the fifth Varna, etc., the Avarn, etc. So yes, this is just a very quick thing. One is the book view and the other is the field view. One is about a certain kind of a static reading of the society and culture, and the other is about more of a dynamic. So whenever we are talking about caste, we are looking at how it intersects with other things like culture, tradition, politics, for example. What is the relationship that caste has with democracy? But in Vern, this is just about day-to-day living and only primarily, in fact, about occupation, work. So Vern is primarily about work. That is, I would say, what distinguishes Vern.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jay, for the question, and thank you, sir, for the clarification. I have a similar points along the same lines, but let's give participants a chance first. We have another hand up. Jaleel, can you please go ahead with your question?
Hi, sir. Thank you for your nice session. It was very nice. I have some more questions. The first one was anyway. First of the my comments, I am just commenting. I am just doing my post graduation in philosophy department at Delhi University. In the last semester, there is a paper, philosophical tradition of India, which was mentioning the Ambedkar, Phule, Gandhi, and Periyar. There are so many people. And in our semester, in our paper, we are reading the primary text only. Even we are not focusing on the commentary of that. So only primary text. I don't know exactly what about the other universities, but our department is focusing on only your primary texts, even in any philosophies, Western or Eastern, any philosophies. Anyway, my question is, you just said that Gandhi's concept of Vern was based on scripture. It was very nice kind of. But my question is, how much he authoritative in Hindu religion after Gandhi and nowadays also. And after Gandhi, there was a kind of situation. Nowadays, the situation is very changed. In both situation, how much he authoritative in Hindu culture, not in a kind of political view. No, I'm just asking you, how much he authoritative in Hindu religion. According to this authoritative, we can say something. He is a kind of Hindu. He has a authority in Hindu because he's just making some kind of narrations which is not going to any kind of grassroots level implication. It's just making some kind of theories or some kind of scriptural kind of narrations. Then we have to know that how much he is authoritative in Hindu religion.
Yeah, thank you. So just to so when I was addressing the last question posed by the previous participant, I never meant to say that Gandhi actually, when he's talking about Vern, he is adhering to scriptures. So I was just making a sociological argument that this is how we generally understand the distinction between Vern as a category and caste, and which is why Ambedkar is always very clear. He does not use the word Vern. He uses the word caste because he realizes that Vern is already a hopeless framework. But just to go back to the question, you see, the question of authority is always a very contested question. It's always a tricky domain. So in one respect, I would say Gandhi does command a certain authority. But then there are also occasions when his authority is questioned. So for example, in the 1930s itself, and I'm reminded of a fantastic letter that Nehru writes to Gandhi. I think it is in 1935-36. And the title of the letter is The Sanatanists, right? So basically what has happened is after this Ambedkar-Gandhi moment, Gandhi has more actively gotten into anti-untouchability campaigns, right? So there is a temple entry movement that Gandhi becomes a part of, and he's actively writing against untouchability. He has almost made it clear that only intercaste marriages he will attend, etc., etc. So Gandhi is actively getting into some sort of an anti-Varna positioning. So Gandhi has written a letter to Nehru telling about how the Sanatanis, the conventional core Hindu community, they have issued a certain declaration, they have issued a certain statement against Gandhi. So you have this also happen. So on the one hand, Gandhi is he is carrying a certain authority, but maybe this authority is for one section. I don't know whether grassroots it is for everyone. We know very well that a lot of the scheduled castes, who were back then called the depressed classes, in fact, Ambedkar always had lesser number of people with him compared to Gandhi. This is also an irony of modern India that, a lot of untouchables, a lot of depressed classes people, they sided with Gandhi. They always considered Gandhi as one of their messiah, one of their, saviors. So the question of authority, he is definitely well versed in the Hindu texts, but he is not really as well versed as somebody like, say, Pandita Ramabai, for example. So Gandhi is aware of, and he is, by the way, he's written a fantastic commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. So which means he knows his stuff, but whether we can consider him really an authority in the religious sense, I don't know. Is he really well versed with the Shastras and the Puranas and the Upanishads and the Vedas? I don't know. He's definitely well versed with Mahabharata, and not the Mahabharata as such, because Mahabharata is quite an epic, but just one particular section of Mahabharata, which is the Bhagavad Gita. So he's definitely engaging with that, and he reflects on that. So authority he does command, but that is always situational, conditional, and sectoral. So it is not like all Hindus are considering Gandhi as their speaker. There are Hindus with, for example, his assassination is basically a testimony to the fact that he was not considered as an authority, right? Otherwise, it would not have happened. So I would say that he definitely, whether it was not really maybe a religious authority, but some kind of a moral authority he did come. A lot of Hindus definitely did not argue with him after a point, because even if they disagreed with him, they believed that Gandhi does not mean any harm, or there is nothing evil in his propositions. And Nehru is a classic case. Nehru would not agree with a lot of things that Gandhi would say, but eventually Nehru would fall in line, because Nehru would give him always this benefit of doubt, concession, etc. So that's what I would say, that he does not really command the kind of authority that Shankaracharya, for example, does, right? Because that's like a solid religious theological authority, but maybe more of a moral authority.
Thanks for your clarification. And my second question is, can we connect the his concept of one? It was oriented or based on the service duty. Then concept of deontology of morality. Can we connect both this?
Sorry, the concept of what of morality?
Deontology.
Deontology.
That means morality based upon the duties.
Okay. Yes, of course. I think indirectly I did refer to this in the beginning when I was talking about Verne, because the moment we bring in the concept of duty and primacy of duty, then the question of morality and a certain sense of service that is informed by morality does come in. So there is, of course, a lot of scope for that, because he does bring in Verne from the vantage point of duty and also a certain kind of a moral obligation. So there is always a possibility of drawing.
Is there any kind of scholastic narration about the similarities of both the ontology and one system of Gandhi?
Sorry, I missed the first part. The frame was frozen.
I mean, any narrations, I mean, scholastic narration, any scholar did mention about the similarities between the ontology and is there any academical studies?
So one person that I'm reminded of is Tridip Suhrud. So Tridip Suhrud is somebody who writes on these things. And I think another person would be not directly, but Gopal Krishna Gandhi, who's Gandhi's grandson. So in some of his reflections on these are the two people that I definitely would recommend. But maybe there are other writings as well, but I'm not aware.
Okay, thank you. This is my last question. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
The concept about the religion.
Yeah.
Gandhi's concept about religion is kind of all religion are same, and this kind of now. Can we connect this kind of concept with the Sufi kind of concept or the Bhakti kind of concepts? Is there is any chance to
Bhakti? Okay.
Bhakti?
Yeah.
Is there is any chance to make Gandhi as a yogi or a kind of, I don't know.
You see, the point is, this is also, whenever we discuss the Sufi, there is a certain politics of discourse. So, and this is it's a very important Foucauldian question for us. So, what we understand to be Sufi, is it really Sufi? That is the question. Because what we understand to be Sufi is primarily to do with a certain kind of a European mediation. So much of Rumi, etc., is through Coleman Barks. And Sufi is usually, in the contemporary discourse, Sufi is premised as somebody who is all over the place, right? Who is enjoying music, who's believing in all religions. I don't think that's really the Sufi concept. If we go back to the origins of tasawwuf, mysticism, it's very deep, and there are brilliant works. In fact, day before yesterday only, I was talking to a junior here in Hyderabad, and we were discussing two great scholars. One is Simon Digby, who has written extensively on the Sufi, because the Sufi is always considered as this person who is anti-jurist. So there is a binary we work with. There is the Sufi and there is the theologian. But if you look at the early Islam, for example, if you look at Ghazali is a theologian and Ghazali is also Sufi. If you look at Rumi, for example, the formative years of Jalaluddin Rumi, he was an extraordinary theologian, a jurist, and he remained one. But then he is also somebody who is in our European sort of Coleman Barks universe. He is a Sufi. So Sufi is presented as someone who's not praying. Sufi is somebody who's dancing, the whirling dervish of Turkey and whatnot. Well, that's just one way of looking at it. So Sufi is about trance, music, dim light, candlelight, whatever stuff. That is just that's a commodity. That's not the idea. Sufi is solid stuff. It's hardcore. It's not just Nizamuddin Qawwali, etc. Right? So there is more to it. So I think Gandhi, in a certain sense, if you're looking at Sufism in terms of a very deep, introspective understanding of some of the foundational questions of existence, creation, divinity, then yes, Gandhi is definitely there, because he is engaging with some deep questions. The question of morality, the question of good and evil, the question of service. And in Sufism, the question of service is very important. If you look at any of the Sufis' biography, the first thing that they are made to do is serve. So they are serving animals for 10 years. The master would say, be in the stable for 10 years. Don't even come here. And this person is going to remain in the stable for 10 years. This happened for Fariduddin Ganjeshakar, the master of Nizamuddin Auliya, etc. So one could, but as I said, the more important question is, what do we understand by Sufi? So if our understanding of Sufi is non-mediated, if it is directly coming from the early, for example, Hazrat Ali and then Hassan Basri, and then from there, if we are Rabi al-Basri and then, Sheikh Junaid Baghdadi, and it's coming to us through that tradition, then that's great. Even Bhakti, these days, Bhakti could be about all kinds of things. Bhakti is also a very powerful spiritual movement. And to understand the depth of, say, for example, Raskhan or Meera or Rahim or Kabir or even Guru Nanak, for that matter, then we will, and Gandhi was definitely inspired by the Bhakti movement a great deal. He has borrowed a great deal from Rahim, he has borrowed a great deal from Guru Nanak, and definitely Meera in terms of devotional piety and worshipping. So this is what I would say. But one can always, as per one's own interpretation, extend the argument, right?
Thanks, sir. Very satisfying narrations. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jalil, for the insightful questions. Does any other participant have any other questions? Please raise your hands. Okay, until then, I can go ahead with some of my comments. Thank you, sir. I mean, I have never had any of. I have never been. I mean, I have never had an insightful conversation about Gandhi, whether I was in JNU or AMU or now in IIT. This was such a wonderful and a lucid interpretation of such complex ideas. So the impressions that I got from the conversation is that there's inherently a tension between how Gandhi sees these three things: the Varna, the religion, and the conversion. So the first thing was that he kind of advocated for this idea of within his ashramic kind of settings. He advocated for this idea of flexibility in the Varna system, actually. So it was some inherent flexibility that we talked about, internal flexibility rather. And on the other hand, he also talked about the idea of virtue, right? So when he talked
Virtue.
about when he talked about dharma as a 24/7, I mean, call for duty. So in all of this, I mean, I'll just kind of mix two, three things here. So putting this first premise on the side, I also, I mean, I was kind of reminded of Plato's Republic and other similar kind of interpretations about how these scholars divided society, interpret the division of society along different lines. So Plato did a similar kind of a scheme in his works in his time. And yeah, there was kind of an agreement with the fact that Gandhi has been borrowing from different. I'm not sure if he has borrowed from Plato, but he definitely has borrowed from other scholars around. But with that, I was also reminded of Iqbal's ideas on religion and politics, and I don't think there's a better person to talk about on that subject than you. So you have an authority. And when Iqbal talks about, for example, this one sher that I'm reminded of is "Juda ho deen se siyasat to reh jati hai changezi." So kind of referring to the idea that the idea of political is inherently embedded in the idea of religion, right? So I mean that's how I understand it. So when Iqbal also talks about the same thing, and Gandhi also kind of interprets the subject in a similar kind of a vein. So I was wondering, where does the scope for individual liberty lie when we try to understand these hegemonic ideas of political in both Gandhi and Iqbal? So is there, because we talked about dialogue and reconciliation, so is there a scope for reconciliation within these ideas, and where does the individual freedom go when we talk about the spiritual or any other kind of an embeddedness of political in religion? Thank you.
So no, this is an interesting parallel that you draw. I'm not really an authority on Iqbal. I just wasted 5 years of mine on Iqbal. But yes, I ended up reading a bit on Iqbal, but Iqbal is very complex. You know, Gandhi is a safe bet. Iqbal is one tough nut to crack, and also very controversial for all kinds of reasons. Iqbal is always in the news. But just, I think it's an interesting argument that you make. And in fact, let me just put this in perspective. So, if we go back to this very infamous address, the 1930 Allahabad address, December address, which is a source of all problems, the ultimate address in modern Indian history, where Iqbal apparently is sort of submitting a certain proposal for a separate homeland within the subcontinent and so on. Iqbal actually in the beginning makes a very interesting argument. In that lecture itself, he makes this argument. And the argument is that in Islam, and that's a very Gandhian position, again, there is a solid parallel that one can see between the Gandhian idea of religion and how Iqbal is conceptualizing religion. And Iqbal points out, and he has picked this thread, this idea in several other essays, lectures of his previously. And he says that in Islam, he's specifically talking about Islam. He says in the beginning itself of his lecture, he says in Islam, the separation of spirit and matter is not possible as it is in Christianity. He makes quite an interesting argument. He says that in Christian Europe, spirit and matter can always be separated, and which is why a certain kind of secular politics has been envisioned in 19th century Europe, and of course, then it is to be found in the 20th century as well. So, and we know very well that when it comes to Christianity, there is a fantastic reference that, the idea of separation in Christianity is as old as Christianity itself. So when Jesus is asked by one of his companions, one of his apostles, should we pay taxes to Caesar? Jesus famously responded, render unto Caesar what belongs to him, and render unto God what belongs to his. What is his? So this is a very interesting idea of separation, that you pay your taxes and you worship God. Tax related stuff is one thing. Worshipping is another. So there are scholars who say that, in Christianity, there is this idea of spirit matter separation. Iqbal is absolutely clear that in Islam, it's not there. In Islam, basically, religion is, again, constitutive. So the political is within religion. So if you think about the classical Islamic position, the caliphate is encompassed by religion. The caliphate is not outside religion. So any system of rights, any system of obligations, any citizenship contract in Islam is not outside religion. And in that sense, Gandhi is, so when the line that you referred to, what Iqbal is trying to point out is he's basically commenting on the degraded status of people who are involved in politics. That if you, and Iqbal always believed in this, that if you do not have a certain moral, religious, Islamic foundation, if you do not have your allegiance to what he called the Muslim culture, then you will be all over the place. Then you're not good news for the community. You are bad news. You are you bring bad news. You don't bring glad tidings. So in that sense, there is a certain connection between and Gandhi always held Iqbal in high regard. Just for information, when Jamia was established and when they were looking for vice chancellor, the first person that Gandhi wrote to was Iqbal. This is the year 1919. He writes a small letter to Iqbal. It's a very short piece. And he says that there is no one else in the subcontinent who is more deserving to be the vice chancellor of this university. But Iqbal, of course, being Iqbal, very strategic, very calculated person. Because there's also the Khilafat movement years. He denies. He says that, no, I'm not. He expresses a certain modest, whatever. He gives a modest response. But anyways, so Gandhi always held Iqbal in high regard. I don't know. Iqbal did not really get to interact with Gandhi that much. And he did, in his writings, he writes more on Nehru and not less on Gandhi. Now, just about individual liberty. Now, that's also an important question. And this is a very critical question in Iqbal as well. Because if we are talking about destiny, because remember, the Islamic belief is that everything is destined. Now, if everything is destined, what do we do about khudi, right? The idea of the self. How does individual agency unfold itself in a world that is already predetermined, right? Because that's the Islamic belief. It is part of the belief of Muslims. So Gandhi looks at the idea of agency in terms of a certain kind of dynamic self. So Gandhi does not talk about destiny. Gandhi is thinking about karma, which is a different version of destiny. Karma is more of cause and effect. Destiny is something that is already there. So destiny is not karma. There can be overlaps, but the theory of karma is very different as compared to the theory of destiny. But Iqbal, individual liberty for Iqbal is, he says that, you will never know about what is destined for you unless and until it happens. So destiny is always retrospectively realized, right? So there is a fantastic line in Jibreel or Iblis, where when Iblis says, the Satan says that it was all decided, you guys are fooling around. Basically, it was already decided. God already knew that I will not prostrate. I will not bow down before Adam. And this is utter nonsense. And then Jibreel says something which is almost very characteristic of Iqbal. He writes, Kab khula tuj par ye raaz, inkar se pehle ke baad. So basically, now you are realizing that it was destined. But at that moment, you actually had your agency. you were well in a position to prostrate, to bow down, and to not bow. You decided. This was your. So individual liberty is always there, but it is the destiny or the determinism of external forces. They dawn upon us, or they reveal their importance or their pivotal stature retrospectively. So individual liberty. So Gandhi is always talking about. Just earlier we were talking about Hinswaraj. Hinswaraj is all about self, rule over self, not self-rule, but rule over self. A very powerful, spiritually informed, deep-rooted self. So individual liberty, without individual liberty, decolonization is not possible for Gandhi. Gandhi makes this interesting argument to Lord Irwin in the Irwin-Gandhi exchange. He says that one thing that you British need to understand is that just a few thousand British cannot rule over millions of Indians, especially if they do not want to be ruled. That's a typical self argument. That if I don't want to be ruled over, you are helpless. There's nothing that you can do about it. And Gandhi was working on that we need to have individuals with self, which is well defined and which is autonomous. And only then the British Empire will fall flat on its plans. It won't be able to succeed. So individual liberty is an important question, but I think both Iqbal and Gandhi engage with this in their own creative ways. Iqbal brings in destiny and khudi in a very interesting interplay. And he's always saying destiny is never known. So it's almost like, again, just to give an example, he uses this example. He says when a painter stands before a canvas, it's a blank canvas. So the painter has an idea of the painting, but there is a way in which that painting acquires a certain shape. So this is exactly about destiny. So the Lord has already destined, but then we are co-authors, and he has written about this. The man is a co-worker. Not consider man as somebody who's a subject, but a co-worker.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was such an interesting elaboration. I'm sure there is much more to it, but I'll go ahead with David Solomon. Please go ahead with your.
Hello, good evening to all of you, and I'm David Solomon. This has been a wonderful journey, actually, to go enter into Gandhian understanding of self, religion, conversion, Varna system. At times, we agree with him, we can travel with him, we can sort of vibrate with him. But there are times when we say, at a practical level, when we have experienced so much the inequality with caste, it's so difficult to accept what he says and what he means. I want to ask one sort of a question. Do you think is it possible to use satyagraha, taken largely from his own reinterpreted understanding of Hinduism, Hindu morality, Hindu way of life, that he formulated this satyagraha, though it is actually a political action, but also a living out of oneself. Satyagraha has become the base. Do you think today satyagraha can become a channel, can become a tool to dialogue with the climate of a fascist ideology that is being forced upon the people, unwilling people today, and they are interpreting their own scriptures very fundamentalistically and say that we have to go back to the original understanding idea of Hinduism and therefore form the social formation according to the particular ideology. Both are drawn from Hinduism. One, Gandhi, the other one is the fundamentalistic understanding, if I am articulating it well, this particular fascist ideology. Do you think satyagraha can become a tool to counter and to dialogue with these forces at a practical level, in a way, at this time?
Okay.
I don't know whether it makes sense.
No, of course it makes sense. It definitely makes sense. It's just that you make, these are very difficult questions, because honestly, who am I, right? I'm hardly of any consequence. Whether I believe in it or I don't believe in it doesn't really matter in the long run. But if I have to share my thoughts, you see, firstly, I think there seems to be Firstly, I think we need to get into what exactly Gandhian idea of satyagraha is, and then perhaps we will be able to understand its currency, its significance in relation to inter-community relations, right? So I'm not even getting into fascism. I'm not even getting into populist, majoritarian, whatever times that people refer to. I'm simply talking about inter-community living and how. So satyagrah, for example, is it's a very poignant sort of political moral philosophy, which is about a certain kind of unconditional belief in possibilities. So this, when I engage in a sort of satyagrah, when I invest myself in this quest, I believe in a certain possibility vis-a-vis the other. So satyagrah is an essentially eternal dialogic politics or even dialogic ethics. So if we are looking at satyagrah from the vantage point of possibilities and endless possibilities, and the idea that I will always believe in, I will never give up on you, right? Or you will never give up on me. If satyagraha is to be understood from that kind of a quintessential Gandhian position, well, that is of course going to do wonders in any inter-community diverse setup, in any inter-community interface. But we have to also understand that different communities are, to what extent satyagraha can really make sense today, I don't know. Because communities are not really, it's not really a horizontal field. For example, Gandhi in Hind Swaraj writes about various things, right? When he's talking about his love for his I wouldn't say love, but his association with cow, and he's reflecting on cow slaughter. So he's saying, I'm going to present myself. Of course, that's a very problematic argument because he's only thinking about Muslims as, slaughterers of cow. But he says that I am going to present myself. Now that's his satyagraha. And this is always based. So whenever satyagraha is invoked, it is always based on the idea that there is an element of conscience on the other side. If there is no element of conscience, if people are worse than Hitler on the other side, satyagraha will not do. If you think about campus politics, student politics, and there are many students here, when students sit on fast unto death, or when Gandhi sat on fast unto death, deep down Gandhi believed that this society will not let me die. But that's the idea. Otherwise, it's a completely lost case. When students sit on fast unto death, the idea is that the administration has some ounce of conscience left. Now, this is the ultimate weapon. So when I sit on fast unto death, I genuinely believe that people on the other side will not let me die. 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. They might force feed me, as it happened in the case of Irom Sharmila for many years. But fast unto death is something that is, again, any political exercise for Gandhi is based on the idea that there is an element of conscience on the other side. If there is no morality on the other side, if the other side is as dead as a rock or a wall, then satyagraha. So the satyagraha is basically between two human subjects and some foundational moral principle. So we might not be at par, but at least I should be able to acknowledge how much you are willing to give up in order to come together with me. If I don't acknowledge that, then your satyagraha is totally down the drains. It's a complete waste. So satyagraha is a human interface. It's not human, non-human. The other person has to be human. And by definition, the human must carry conscience. If the conscience is dead, if it's just another plastic individual or a mannequin, well, then there is no satyagraha. So satyagraha definitely offers extraordinary scope. But as I said, that it also has to do with the fields we are operating in, the times we are operating. Gandhi had just one principle, that it is about an unconditional, unwavering, indomitable spirit that is about allegiance to truth. And I believe that only by sacrificing, only by giving up on a lot of things, I can convince you. And there is a certain moral force. And satyagraha is also, according to Gandhi, it is a weapon of not the weak, it's a weapon of the powerful. So satyagrahis are not passive resistors. Satyagrahis are active. He makes a distinction between passive resistance and satyagraha in Hind Swaraj. So I would say it's a fantastic philosophy. It's a fantastic idea when it comes to inter-community living, when it comes to the India that we have. But if people on the other side do not have an ounce of conscience, then I really don't know whether Satyagraha will really take us very far. So that's what I would say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have a few more participants who have raised their hands, and we have around 8 minutes. So I would request them to be brief in their questions. Vikash, can you please go ahead with your question? Vikash is also doing Gandhi Fellowship this time, so I hope he has more insights to share with us.
Yeah. Hello, I am Vikas, and I am currently doing fellowship in Mewat. And uh, sometimes I also spend a few time with grandson of Mahatma Gandhi, Raj Mohan Gandhi. He shared many his practices and all about his memory of with Gandhi. I want to know the more about the allegations uh, Mahatma Gandhi has uh, faced several allegations throughout his life related to political strategies, religious view, and personal choices. I want more in many critics believe that Gandhi was a biased in favor of Muslims and gave more importance to their demands than to those of Hindus. This led to,
This is
and
fascinating.
I want to know more about the context.
Sorry. Were you
Yeah, yeah.
finished? You wanted
Yes,
to
yes, I feel it. I just wanted to know about the context.
Yeah, so just to be very quickly, I think this is also an important question. But you see, there are all kinds of accusations. This is just one accusation that you have. So there are different critiques of critiques of Gandhi. So there is, of course, a critique of the Hindu right, which is exactly what you just pointed out. That Gandhi was basically massively into what is now famous, what is now usually called Muslim appeasement, right? So he was considered as somebody who appeased the minority all the time. Minority appeasement, Muslim appeasement. That's the Hindu right. But there is also a feminist critique of Gandhi. It's a very powerful critique because of Gandhi's very traditional sexual division of labor sort of ideas, masculine, feminine, his idea of the woman, etc., and his take on celibacy, brahmacharya, etc. The feminist critique. Then there is a Marxist critique of Gandhi as well. That Gandhi was somebody who was always hanging out with the industrialists, Birla House, Tatas, etc., this, that. So, and then a very powerful Dalit critique. So I would say one way or another, except the Hindu right, I would say, all the critiques have their own genuine location. As far as this Muslim thing is concerned, you see, this is exactly like what secularism stands. So there is a lot of criticism of secularism as well these days. And a lot of people say secularism is basically minoritism, right? That the secularism is nothing else but a certain kind of euphemism for minoritism. Secularism is all about favoring minorities. Now, in any nation state, in any democratic setup, by default, any committed politician must favor the minorities. Politics will be always about the minorities. Democracy is by default wired in a pro minority way. The fundamental claim of democracy, when you say people, these are not people in general. This is the commoners. And once in a while, this could also be marginalized. So democracy by default is inclined towards women, is inclined towards tribals, inclined towards sexual minorities, Dalits, ethnic, religious, linguistic, regional minorities. So I don't think, because that's a different discussion, uh, you know, I would say that these are all accusations. And if we read, see, Gandhi, again, just to give you a quick example, when he's in Patna, and when he's in Noakhali, and when he's in Calcutta, and when he's in Delhi, Gandhi has just one clear agenda. He knows that there is a majority and there is a minority. So, for example, in Patna, he's very clear. So, in Calcutta, it is the Muslims who are leading to issues. So, he's siding with the Hindus there because he gets this majority minority bit. He knows that in different parts of India, not everywhere one community is the victim. One community can also be the perpetrator. So in Delhi, he is expecting the Hindus to come and openly declare that they will not indulge in communal violence. He is not. In Noah Khali, the Muslims have already told that we will not. But Gandhi wants an assurance from the Hindus. He wants assurance from both. So his idea of minority is not related to religion. His idea of minority is more circumstantial, right? So in any context, Muslim can be minority. In some other context, Hindu can be minority. And Gandhi is very principled on these lines. Wherever he realizes that the Hindus have been the perpetrators, he goes after Hindus. And in cases the Muslims have been perpetrators, he goes after the Muslims. He is not convinced if the Hindus say, no, we are doing, no. So it happened. The majority community came and said, everything is fine, you don't worry, why don't you finish your fast unto death? Gandhi says, no, I want the assurance from the minority. The minority should come and tell me that they are not under any fear, that everything is over, communities are back together, and the inter-community living is back in order. So these are some of the things that we can think about, but I genuinely think that this actually merits a different discussion. This is a completely different thing that we can do.
We have scope for one last question. Jaya Iyer, you had your hand up. Do you have anything to ask? Please go ahead. Jaya?
My name is Jaya, and currently I'm in Karnataka, though I live in Gujarat. I'm a theatre artist. And I just wanted to bring back one of the answers that you had, where you were talking about how Gandhi interprets the meaning and actually claims some of the older notions. And I was like intrigued by how he would even use a term like Ekadasha Vrata and kind of entirely bring about a different meaning to what they usually it's a very Vaishnavic tradition thing. But how do you see uh, his emphasis on ahimsa as the touchstone? Uh, Satya, of course, but also ahimsa, and nothing apart from that works for him. And how he would even look at all other scriptures, whatever he managed to read, uh, and even other sociological, political literature, the touchstone of ahimsa. And how do you reflect on that?
So, that's, the Gandhian concept of ahimsa is, I don't know, this really, so my apologies for the incoherence, right, in advance. I might not be very coherent because there are different thoughts at the moment. But one of the things about, so for example, there are two things that are absolutely clear, that ahimsa is not a passive thing. It's actually, it's brimming with agency. It is brimming with a certain investment of human action. Ahimsa is not passive. And Gandhi has offered this clarification repeatedly, that someone who seeks recourse to non-violence is not somebody who's meek, is not somebody who's powerless, is not somebody who is to be subordinated. But this is a person who carries extraordinary potential, is brimming with human agency, but chooses a certain way of conduct, right? So ahimsa is for the most part about a certain moral choice, that I can indulge in violence, but I will not. So ahimsa is not, for example, if there is an interface and I run into a very powerful person and I say, I forgive you. Well, of course, what else can I do? I must forgive that person. But Gandhi's idea of ahimsa is based on a deeply morally based choice of retreating, but at the same time engagement. So that is one. That ahimsa is the weapon not of the weak, but it is the weapon of the powerful. And in that sense, I think he kind of pushes a bit further as compared to the Jainism conception of ahimsa. He definitely borrows a lot, and you have already in the beginning, I think you've helped us contextualize that because of a certain kind of an upbringing in Saurashtra of a certain age, Gandhi was always, alongside the Vaishnavites, but he was always sort of somebody who very deeply was influenced by the Jain traditions, right? It was almost an arm's length away. So one is that ahimsa is, so he kind of adds to it in the Jainist, in the concept, the ahimsa, the connotation in Jainism, maybe the idea of agency does not come across as clearly. It is there, definitely. It's a conscious act, the idea of nonviolence. So that is one. The other is he brings in ahimsa in terms of his broader philosophy of means and end. And that's where, again, he goes against the dominant Western philosophy. So the Western instrumentalist utilitarian philosophy was about end determining means. But here Gandhi is introducing a completely new argument, which is that it is our means that are going to justify our case for the end. So by seeking recourse to ahimsa, we will compel the British Empire to leave us as free citizens, free individuals. So this is again, so ahimsa as something that is a very powerful means to vis-a-vis attainment of truth in that sense. And you're right, ahimsa and truth are pivotal. These are cornerstones of Gandhian philosophy. It's impossible to speak about. So I would say that there is a slight, he very much borrows from the Jain tradition, but the push is that don't you dare consider, that's Gandhian position, don't you dare consider a person seeking recourse to ahimsa as somebody who's powerless, somebody who's very weak. No, ahimsa is a weapon of the powerful. Ahimsa is a conscious choice. I can hurt you, I can be violent with you, but I decide not to. And in that prioritization, in that preference, lies my moral foundation. So in deciding, in choosing not to be violent, so non-violence is not absence of violence, but non-violence is a position against violence. So I can be violent. I carry that streak in me, but I decide not to be. And in that sense, Gandhi is kind of infusing an element of agency, which is not that clearly pronounced. My understanding of Jainism is very elementary. So I don't want to comment on a religion because I'm sure there is much more to it. But my hunch is that in Jainism, it does not come out that clearly, the idea of nonviolence and the idea of equal rights or equal pedestal for all forms of life. That's the Jain conception of nonviolence. So that is one. And in addition to that, as I thought that his political philosophy, making means more important than end, because modern politics, modern civilization, modern culture was all about the end, that it is the end that is going to justify whatever we do. But Gandhi is kind of reversing the entire thing, as he's been doing to many things. He is always going to kind of come ahead with his own unique position. And he says that it is our means that will eventually justify our end. So our end is Swaraj, our end is decolonization. But our means, ahimsa and satya. And if we remain nonviolent, if we remain truthful, the British eventually will be compelled to give in to our demands. We don't necessarily, as opposed to the extremists and the revolutionaries, which said end will justify means. So we can be violent because our end is freedom. That's the typical revolutionary sentiment. But Gandhi goes against that.
Though I also feel, sorry, I'm cutting you, like maybe at some point even the British leaving stopped being the end. It went far beyond it.
Sorry, maybe
decolonization.
The British leaving, sorry, I didn't get it.
Was not the end in itself. It was much more than that. It was really the Gram Swaraj or the kind of education.
Yes.
Probably a lot more. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for this question, though. Thank you very much.
We are very thankful to you, sir, for such an interesting talk. And this was like really thought-provoking. I personally learned a great deal, and I'm sure the participants did equally. We thank you for your time and for engaging with the students, and we really look forward to having you more often in our courses with more sessions. We also thank the participants for their patience and for engaging and for thought-provoking questions. and also reminding them that they should submit the reflection forms as and when they are sent to them. Thank you again, all of you, for your time. A very good evening to you. Good night, rather.
Thank you, everyone.
Please see you next time.
I'm most grateful for all the questions and for a very engaging, collaborative session. Thank you very much, and all the very best to each one of you in whatever you're doing and whatever is lined up. All the very best, and in all likelihood, we'll cross ways someday, somewhere. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all. Good night. Allah Hafiz.